Okay, 6.8, 10:15 a.m., consideration of presentation of Lake County Food Production Program, concept with potential direction to staff. Supervisor Sabatier.
So I'm going to actually, I'll try to do it, Johanna. I'm joining Zoom. Nope, I got it. If you can give me 1 second to get on, I apologize. Wasn't thinking of sharing screens. And I can't talk and do this at the same time because that's a very difficult task. All right, there it is. All right, thank you very much. This is something that I've been thinking about for quite a while. And it was funny, on the first, I think it was the first month that Supervisor Crandall and I got here, we got the crop report, which was kind of reminiscent of Trading Places, and I got really exciting that I got the crop report. But I've been really into reading the crop report and seeing what our trends are, where we're going with it. And food has always been something that I feel has been kind of missing from our crop report that our ag commissioner has always been bringing to us. We have a lot of ag activity. We're a county that's known for the ag opportunities that we have and the ag business that we have here locally. But again, when I look around for, can I find enough to create dinner? Can I find enough to create meals? Can I find enough to live off of sustainably, and we have limited resources here when it comes to food. This has gone through different iterations of how can we go about creating more food production or incentivizing more food production. And some puzzle pieces finally fell together in the right place. And I think also I'm part of the NACO Economic Mobility Leadership Network. My visit to Florida and Palm Beach and seeing what they're doing in their agriculture over there triggered some thoughts. Going through the Ag Venture triggered some thoughts. And then my meeting and conversations with Blue Zones kind of sealed those thoughts. And so let me go ahead and get started here. So our ag stats, going back to 2004, and again, thank you for all the crop reports that are available online. Our vegetable crops were at 50 acres, wine grapes 7,000, pears 2,500, walnuts 2,700, cattle about 4,000. And you'll notice in 2021, all the general food crops reduced. Vegetable crops are at 7.52 acres, down 85%. Our pears are down 42% to almost 1,500 acres. Walnuts are a bit of an anomaly. I know that the industry itself is struggling to be able to make it economically, but there are some walnut farmers that still remain. So that one says an increase of 30% from 2004, but I would say in the recent years, it's definitely dropped off quite a bit. Then you look our cattle and calves, and it's also dropped by more than 61%. And in comparison, we see wine grapes go up 46%, but we know wine grapes aren't not the table grapes that you would eat. Those get turned into wine. And then, of course, I did not mention cannabis since that's not in our crop reports, but we've had a large increase in that, which I don't even know you could put a percentage since it went from 0 to something. And so that kind of shares the concern of sustainability-wise for Lake County. I'm thinking things like climate change issue, where every meeting that I go to at the state or around the nation, food scarcity is a topic that consistently gets shared and talked about. And food scarcity is based on the idea that if there's a horrible weather pattern that affects our bread baskets, where the majority of our food is grown and comes from, such as the Central Valley, that there will be food scarcity, and how are we going to be able to survive those food scarcity moments? Are we competitive enough to ensure that we can bring in food to our grocery stores and people continue to eat? Or what can we work on to be self-sustainable so that we can make sure to help ourselves? So here's also some health stats, food environment, food insecurity. I put adult obesity there. These all come from the community health needs assessments from 2019. And just to show food insecurity, Lake County's at a score of 17 when the rest of California is 11.7. And that's dealing mostly with poverty and access to food. Food environment is the number of choices, the easy of access and choice. And Lake County is also below in that one and up above in food insecurity. Obesity, we're actually doing really well. Well, I wouldn't say we're doing well, but in comparison to others, we're doing well. So how do we get to where I feel we should be, where there's more food being produced, and what can the county do? So we've tried this before in probably more than one iteration that I'm aware of, but I definitely know of one iteration that started in, I think, the early 2010s or something like that. I started my meetings with farmers saying I would love to see more farmers to create more food, and I kind of got an awesome answer of that won't help. Flip your script. Start looking at the demand, not the supply. If we create more supply, our farmers are struggling because the demand is not easily accessible out there. And so work on the demand. The demand will create a higher incentive for farmers to expand or farmers to start. And that's where Blue Zones came in. When I met with Blue Zones, loved their model. Just a brief description of Blue Zones. Blue Zones has been studying the world where people live long, happy, and healthy lives. And they've figured out kind of the 9 pillars of what should be done in order for you to have that type of potential life expectancy and happiness and so on and so forth. And food is definitely a part of that. And they've been doing a great work in connecting with our food markets, such as our grocery stores, our restaurants, our hospitals, our schools. Not all of them are necessarily markets, but food delivery. And when I looked at their pledge, I asked them, what exactly are we pledging, or what exactly are stores pledging to when they pledge a Blue Zone certification? And I didn't see buy local food as being one of their primary things that they're looking for them to do. Well, Blue Zones has the idea that the healthy choice should be the first choice. And to me, local food is the healthy choice, and so that should be the first choice. If a restaurant is looking for food and they're Blue Zone certified, or a hospital, they should be looking at a local distributor for local food rather than going directly to Cisco and looking at a national or international model of accessing food. And so they actually like the idea, and this is something that they will be working on and implementing so that we can go ahead and have the stores that are current. I mean, we have the Saw Shop, we have Conocta Unified School District. I think every school district except for one is working towards Blue Zone certification. We have Adventist Health, we have Foods, etc., and there's more and more and more that are being worked on to create these models. And so the demand will be increasing. Then the distribution. So I've met with NCO, who runs the Mendo Lake Food Hub. I'm not here to necessarily advertise and advocate for their program, but their program exists. Let's not create something that already exists. If something new happens to open up because the demand is there, great. Awesome, let's see what we can create. But there is one distribution locally that already exists, and so met with them, and they're looking to be prepared for the expansion based on local farmers selling them their goods and markets purchasing directly from them. So then that comes to farmers. So far, I haven't really touched as to what Lake County can do, but farmers have a threshold that is difficult to overcome. Farmers economically have constantly struggled. If you look at our crop numbers, that explains everything. Not saying, I think wine grapes have changed a lot over the years, not saying wine grapes are highly economical. You'd have to have a lot of acres, you have to have a large model to go by, but farmers, you can see the number of vegetables being grown has decreased because it is not economically viable. It's not as simple as you would like, as we would all like it to be, and farming is super important, food is super important, and so on. So what if there were market incentives, or what if there were Lake County incentives? So the market incentives obviously is the demand. We can create that, that's gonna be happening. What can the county do to incentivize more farmers to start farming food and becoming a part of this food program? And so we have a lot of land. that is tax defaulted that we're constantly talking about and not quite sure what to do with. It's possible we can buy some of that land. It's possible to lease some of that land at nominal fees so that we can have almost like a farming incubator. And these are just ideas. These are not things that need to happen. There's the potential for doing a sort of property tax reduction if you're part of a local food production program, similar to what the Williamson Act was, but something more locally. And again, if you get those incentives, you'd be part of this program, you'd use a local distribution agency, and that local distribution would be selling to our local markets that are making that first and priority to buy local. So these are just ideas of how we can get more food farming to occur, and the arrow key is not going to help since it's a scroll. And so some of the results, if we can make these things happen, is increased food production, which helps us be more sustainable during emergencies, during crisis, during whatever, and even a normal day. Great to have local food. It increases our health metrics. We constantly talk about our health metrics. Part of the reason Blue Zones is here is to help us with our health metrics. Having access, easy access to healthy food, local food, has that ability to increase our health metrics. Bigger and better farmers markets. We know at farmers markets that those that are on CalFresh can double their dollars and purchase more. We have a large population who has access to that subsidy. Decreased food insecurity. We have a high level, as I noted in our community health needs assessment, a high level of food insecurity. By having more access to healthy food and food itself, we can decrease that. It creates entrepreneurship, employment opportunities, and it can help us become a more sustainable county. So the results are all positive. We have many partners. Not all of them are listed here, but obviously Blue Zones, I think, helps us with the demand. NCO has the ability to help us with distribution. Good Farm Fund has been helping our local farms. I don't want to say all local farms, but some local farms in Lake County and Mendocino with grant opportunities that they've been helpful through the COVID crisis as well. Then I met with Red Cross, which we had an amazing conversation, and I appreciate Red Cross being in the room today. When I traveled to Hawaii, to Maui, and in Maui, and Blue Zones happened to be there for this grand opening, Maui did exactly what I'm kind of discussing. They purchased 400 acres of land, they leased it to local farmers. The local farmers then were able to use the local government to create a co-op processing plant to package their food, and then they're selling their food, and Hawaiian Airlines is about to use 40% of their entire food from that local farm that the public-private partnership has created. Red Cross has said they've worked on things like this before in the past, and they're looking to get me involved in having a conversation with their national team to see what's possible in creating something like that here. The Farm Bureau is excited about this. Our Ag Commissioner and I have had conversations about this. Obviously, great interest. UC Extension, Clemson is our part of UC Extension for farming diversity, and he's interested in the topic. And Lake County EDC, who does a lot of work with USDA and others, is also interested because of the potential of jobs and the potential of economic development that comes along with it. And so today, I'm asking not to approve an idea that has yet to be formulated in a very concrete way, but looking to move forward with something that used to be in existence a while ago, and that was our Food Policy Committee. I'd like to reactivate that. What's wonderful is Blue Zones is offering to be the lead agency for this committee, so we wouldn't be asking our directors to take the lead, create agendas, organize the meetings, and if approved by the board to move forward with the Food Policy Committee being reactivated, on June 6th, which I think is our first meeting in June, I would come back with a consideration of a new composition of what that committee looks like. That committee would be charged with finalizing the food program policy and come back to the Board of Supervisors to see if this is something that we would like to be a part of and see if we can roll this out. And that is a very, hopefully, brief attempt at expressing some of the work that I've been working on and what I am excited to bring to the Board of Supervisors today.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I want to thank you for bringing it forward. It's interesting. For me, it has two main elements, and one is food insecurity and the ability of people to get, good, healthy food. But it also has to do with business modeling and increasing sustainability of our local economy, creating opportunities for our local growers. But the first slide, where you showed basically our veggie production falling off, represents, the sober reality. There's no money in it. And to the extent our local growers have pursued those paths before, they're not doing it now for assorted reasons. And so in other parts of the state, masses of good vegetables. What are the logistics of getting it here? What are the costs of getting it here? How do we get it to the people in need? So there's both a food aid and a food insecurity aspect of what you're bringing forward, but there's also some business modeling and trying to bring that forward. And also, I'm aware, some of you are too, food banking is a part of that. So we have local food aid organizations, we have regional organizations, and we may be talking about this stuff from more of a food security, food aid perspective sooner than later. But to your ask, establishing a food policy committee, I'm not a big fan of committees, but because there's two big kind of issues kind of rolling around there, and in this case, I would support the recreation of this committee just to bounce these ideas around, both from the supporting our local markets and somehow getting local food into local tummies that may be perceived by some as being superior to food from out of the county, but also in figuring out our food relief, our food resiliency thing, the thing that you're most excited about. So I think the Food Policy Committee is a good recommendation in this case. I think the slides that you presented some good bullet points. I think there may be a few other bullet points that weren't presented that committee could dive into and should dive into. So I'm supportive of this.
Okay, do we have members from the public? Looks like we do. Do come on up, you can state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, Greg Dameron, Blue Zones Project. Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier, for bringing this forward. Thank you, Board. I just have a quick story. A couple months ago, I ran into a young farmer. He, I think 29 years old, stopped growing cannabis in Mendocino County, moved to Lake County, bought some property, and was ready to start growing vegetables. I've also talked to farmers that had the dream a number of years ago and eventually didn't become economically viable for them, and they threw in the towel. So I've heard lots of great stories, but I want to focus on the first story. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here. This is an incredible community. We didn't even go into the reverberating effects of this kind of economic development that can happen, and just how it incentivizes all kinds of things connected to tourism, et cetera. So super excited to support. It's always wonderful to be chasing after local leaders and elected officials and supporting their vision rather than trying to muster up vision. So excited for this opportunity, and we've got some great other leaders and collaborators here supporting this. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to come up in the chambers?
You came all this way.
As long as we're sharing narrative, I'm Laura McAndrews-Samuel. I'm with the Lake County Chamber of Commerce, and I will tell a quick story about one of our members. I had the pleasure of, she was very generous and shared a financial summary of their farm, local farm, and they grow one big specialty crop that they chose because they felt like just having a farm stand with vegetables wouldn't be profitable. So they grow this specialty crop, and when we look at the financial breakdown, their specialty crop is only 10% of their revenue, and their farm stand is about 80% of their revenue. So I think that having a farm stand and growing vegetables can be a financially viable operation if it's run correctly. So thank you, Supervisor Sabatier, for bringing this forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriela Perez, and I'm here to say that it's right what is happening. You have organizations, national organizations, that are looking at this as a problem that we have, and this is a chronic problem that we are all facing. So it'd be great to have Lake County as a lead to change the narrative, and with having support from local organizations and national organizations that will be helping lead this ideas, I think you can make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone in the Zoom room? Not seeing any hands. All right, I'll close it and bring it back. Vice Chair Simon?
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you for bringing this, Supervisor Sabatier. We've had many discussions here at the board about how we move forward with the food production. I think food production, and thank you for making that iteration, that the winekeeper industry, which is excellent in the community, does a great job, creates many benefits, but it's not producing that food that's needed in the households. And I think this step forward, in complete support of setting up the committee, or reestablishing the committee and what is brought forward. But also, too, to always keep in mind, let's not complicate it. Incentivizing, not disincentivizing our crop growers to move into a different market, I think is very important. I definitely support the idea, but how that looks moving forward, because I really want to make sure we incentivize farmers who may be on the cusp of making a decision to do this, and understanding, that we're here to support them, not to make it harder on them. So whenever we're passing stuff for ag, traditional ag, or getting convoluted with the conversation with commercial cannabis and other things, that we really work to support those folks who can provide food. And also on here, our cattle industry, folks that are raising local beef that is sold here in our communities. There's not a big cattle or a meat distribution company, but a lot of the local folks still do buy cattle, buy 3 or 4, split 1 in half with somebody, and they fill their freezers, helps do that stuff. So making sure we're incentivizing that I think is the most important thing that you touched on in your presentation. So, completely support it, and hopefully we'll be seeing that increase over the next 5 years, because we really want to do that. Just as we've said with the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority, everything that we're working on here, we're a small rural community, something major happens, it's going to be a while before they get to us. So, our OE, Emergency Operations Service through the Sheriff Department, everything we're building is self-sustainability, and this is just another conversation in that manner. So greatly appreciate those conversations. So support it. Yes.
We have a hand up in Zoom, so I'm going to reopen public input. Nicole Flora.
Thank you, Chair Pyska. This is Nicole Flora, Executive Director for the Lake County Economic Development Corporation. I just wanted to share my thoughts quickly. As the EDC, we support the idea of this policy committee being reformed, and we would encourage that policy committee to really seek more information from farmers, understand what the barriers are, and I agree with the idea of incentivizing them to enter the market, but really with the thought of removing barriers that are keeping people from either starting a business or growing within Lake County, and understanding what those issues are specific for that industry. But I'm encouraged by the idea of this committee coming together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And Jennifer Smith.
Good morning, Board. This is Jennifer Smith. This is exciting. Food insecurity is a personal passion of mine and some of our other members of the Lake County Cannabis Alliance. And we have, for 3 years now, tossed around the ideas of how do we get food from our farms to the community. And to hear that there's actually a distribution in place is really exciting. And I'm looking forward to bringing this back to my industry and seeing how we can further help this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to close public input again. And I am excited that there's fresh minds and fresh energy on this. This is a world that I was in for a long, long time, and it's hard. It's really hard. So I'm glad that there's some new energy, because the success has always been on an individual basis, and when that individual is overwhelmed or burnt out or out of resources, then everything kind of collapses around it. So it's been fits and starts for many years, and that's, what I did. I worked in the schools. I worked in garden education. I worked trying to connect the cafeterias to local production, and it's hard. So I'm excited to see other people. I'm not going to be on this committee because I've already done it, and I think that new energy is good. There's obviously a lot of environmental concerns. This is not a drought year. So it's a good year to have this discussion. When we have droughts, that's a hard discussion to have then. I have also, it's always important that this is a carrot and not a stick, because we are, our current farmers have a lot on their plate. And I don't want to make sure that we're impacting them anymore and putting more on them that they just frankly cannot bear. So I think the most important thing is we have a lot of places right now that you can buy local products. You can buy local meat. District 1, out on a big ranch, a couple of big ranches. You can go to restaurants that serve the local meat. Farm stands are about to open. Our farmers are breaking their backs right now getting those crops ready. So as this conversation continues, don't forget to be out there at those farmers markets every single week, because without the support of every single one of us going there, they're not going to make it. And I don't want to see anything lost in the creation. So while the energy is there, and I appreciate it and I support it, and I'm so happy to see it, now is the time to go out there and really support the people that are doing the work today. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Just point of clarification, since this is reconstituting, so food policy committee implies maybe the county has a food policy that's already been established or maybe should be established. So question number one, does the county have a food policy that was passed under the previous iteration of this committee? And if so, what are kind of the basic aspects of that policy? But just assuming that one doesn't exist and this newly revitalized committee will bounce some ideas for a food policy, I just want to highlight again, I hear two major things. One is let's create economic development and support local farmers, and maybe that's a worthy goal, maybe. But the Mendo Lake Food Hub I see as a project of NCO. So to the extent our local non-governmental organizations want to partner with economic development people and create avenues for food opportunity for local growers, that's one thing. The other part, again, is food aid and how to get food in the hands of those that most need it. Those aren't necessarily two sides of the same coin. And so it is good to have new energy focused on maybe the economic development side, but we also need apparently a fresh set of energy and ideas and partners on the food aid and the food distribution and the food bank side. So if there is an existing food policy, I'd like to know what it is. Doesn't have to happen today. If this committee is revitalized, one suggestion would be not just giving them a blank check, but review the food policy or draft a food policy that can address the bullet points that this board wants to get in there. And it can be both. I assume when we bring a policy forward, it can address both economic development and it can address food aid. But let's identify those two major balls in the air and understand that they're not the same thing.
Supervisor Spatier?
So I appreciate the comments, and I want to provide the idea to the committee, but I think the committee will have the professionals and the knowledge to be able to really formulate something that can give you better details than I can provide prior to the committee being created. I think we give them a concept to work on, and then they come back with what they've created. As far as a current food policy, I am not aware of a current food policy. and definitely not aware of one that mimics this type of relationship with our local farmers and so on and so forth. I do want to touch on something that Vice Chair Simon mentioned. This is not just about vegetables and fruits. This is also about meat, and I'm also very interested in understanding where do acorns fit? Because I was thinking about sustainability, and then I kind of smacked myself silly, and for 7,000 years, acorns have been the sustainable resource for the people that lived here. And so can that play a role in moving forward? What's the possibility? And I don't know enough to speak on that again, but I think that's something that I would like to have that Food Policy Committee look into and see what they come up with. And so today, just looking for that consensus. I believe I have consensus to move forward.
Yes.
And I will come back on June 6th with a consideration of composition of the Food Policy Committee.
Okay, thank you. All
And
right.
thank you.
It would be really good to address the acorn situation as well, because in different markets or stores, they have acorn flour. And so it would be nice for it to come from here, you know. We're bringing it in from other places or buying it from other places, so it could be ideal.
According to Chef Robert Cabreros at Woodland Community College, South Korea is the only place that makes acorn flour. That was not what I expected to hear when I asked him about that. And I do want to thank the folks that have had conversations with me. I'm looking forward to continuing those conversations, and thank you so much.